guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about one of the books that was on my most anticipated reads of 2025 list, and that is The Spider to the Fly by J.H. Markert. Now, if you are unfamiliar with J.H. Markert, he is an author who's been around for quite a while. I believe this is actually his 11th book ever, but this is his 4th book under the name J.H. Markert. He uses this name when he writes like his horror and thriller stories. I'm not 100% sure what his other genre of fiction is, but I have been reading him since I first discovered his first release under J.H. Markert, which was The Nightmare Man. It was 100% a cover by. The cover really spoke to me with this creepy like kind of scarecrow Freddy Krueger moment on the cover. I read it, I really enjoyed it, and I have since read everything that he has released under the title. I followed it up with Mr. Lullaby, which I quite liked. Both of those first books felt very fantasy adjacent. Recently read Sleep Tight, which I think might be my favorite thing that I have read from J.H. Markert. It was the first novel that he wrote that I felt really strayed away from kind of having a fantastical element thrown in, and it got me really pumped for his latest release, Spider to the Fly. So let's read the premise of this and then we're going to chat. So it says, a true crime author helps in a desperate hunt for a killer in this dark and twisted thriller from the deviously inventive horror author that Peter Ferris calls the clear heir to Stephen King. Perfect for fans of cat and mouse serial killer thrillers like The Butcher and the Wren and The Jigsaw Man. Ellie Isles first became obsessed with the I-64 murders when she saw her own face on one of the victims. Identical to every detail, the woman wasn't her, but she could have been. Compelled to discover the story of her doppelganger's death, Ellie wrote a best-selling true crime book about the serial killer dubbed The Spider. 4 years later, the spider still hasn't been caught, and his victim count is climbing. Many of the bodies remain unidentified, but with Ellie's online network of true crime followers, that's slowly changing. Together, they've pooled information to create a massive database that tracks people at risk of becoming Jane and John Does, the homeless, the drug addicted, and the downtrodden, with the hopes that if they become victims, they might at least be identified. Now that Ellie has successfully identified multiple victims, the law enforcement task force tracking down the spider pulls her in to help, and after Ellie's therapist is arrested for the murders, she is more determined than ever to help catch the spider. With striking prose and a horror flair, Spider to the Fly is an engrossing serial killer thriller perfect for fans of The Whisper Man. Alrighty. So, when I first read The Nightmare Man, I was really impressed. The fantasy element of it kind of threw me off, but I was still very impressed with what I read. I then read Mr. Lullaby, which, while I did really enjoy that story, it felt very similar in tone and structure to The Nightmare Man, including the inclusion of those fantastical elements. And I kind of said to myself, okay, maybe this is like J.H. Markert's thing. And then I read Sleep Tight, which again is my favorite thing that I've read from him. It did not feel formulaic at all. It felt very different from the structure that he had created for The Nightmare Man as well as Mr. Lullaby, and really leaned into more plausible thriller crime could actually exist in reality. I had such a blast with that book. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was compelling. I thought it was mysterious. I thought it had a cool twist. So I was excited to see what he did with Spider to the Fly. Unfortunately, and not necessarily in a bad way, Spider to the Fly follows the same kind of formulaic style, especially the first half of the novel that is set up within Sleep Tight. We kind of have this like parental relationship. We have somebody kind of coming in to help with a task force that shouldn't be there because their child is directly connected to the case because of kind of being swept up by their proximity to the killer at large. This kind of idea of there being maybe 2 different people involved rather than just one, like all of these things that are kind of hinted at in the first half of the book. And then as we get closer towards the reveals, you kind of see that they definitely depart. But it did feel very like copy and paste in the structure of the story. And I think that threw me off quite a bit at first. However, I did enjoy this book. I did quite enjoy this book. I thought it was a really interesting concept to take an internet sleuth and kind of make her the main character when almost all of Markert's other novels really focus on like actual detectives. And I really, really liked that angle. And I liked the way that this was an internet sleuth who didn't have all of the answers, but instead was doing her best to assist the FBI as well as the police task force by doing things that maybe they wouldn't have thought to do or didn't have the capabilities to do through her online forum. I thought that was really, really interesting, and it made Ellie a really, really likable character. She has a lot of like strange trauma that I feel like didn't quite add anything to the story overall. Her relationship with her daughter is very, very weird, and the way that she thinks about men is very, very weird, and it all comes from a very blunt root cause that has this kind of dramatic blow up in a very heated scene between daughter and mom. And yet the emotional payoff of that reveal never really went anywhere. It didn't make me feel like it bonded them more. It just kind of felt like it was there for like dramatic effect and then added absolutely nothing more to the story. And I kept waiting for that to come back and kind of have this pivotal meaning. And I just felt like it didn't work in the way that Markert was trying to, especially for it being something so unfortunate and tragic. And maybe it was put there as a way to like work with us to understand why Ellie is the way that she is, but it just didn't feel developed enough to get that across. I thought the character development in this was really interesting. Ellie's therapist, I would say Ian is definitely the one that gets unraveled the most. We get to see into who he is the most, and I think his kind of overarching storyline and character revelations definitely felt the most written with care. Ellie's not so much. Hers kind of felt very flat. Her and her daughter felt like very like one-note characters, which is difficult for me when I want to read about people that I really, really am interested in. Alongside with like her neighbor, like there were just a lot of characters that just never really felt like they went anywhere, except for Ian and Edward. I felt like you definitely got a decent chunk of who they were and why they were the way that they were. And I appreciated that because understanding where these two characters are coming from definitely helps anchor the end of the story. But I also felt like I needed more because there were just so many characters throughout the entire novel. And while they all did feel like they played necessary roles and parts, they all felt very short and truncated. Like, I felt like maybe we could have combined a few storylines or maybe even made the novel longer to enrich it a little bit more, because there are some kind of intense scenes. There are some really intense topics talked about within this novel, but at the end of the day, I felt like it didn't really matter when we got to what the big reveal was at the end. And it's definitely a world that I would like to explore more. Now, one of the things that I do really quite like about Markert is that all of his books really feel very connected. The Nightmare Man and Mr. Lullaby definitely are in the same universe. They feel very, very closely connected, like they are almost unofficial sequels to one another. And I do love that Sleep Tight and Spider to the Fly both take place in and around Twisted Tree, Kentucky. I think that's really cool. He's kind of creating this almost like Stephen King-esque universe for his characters, and I love reading about that. And if it turns out that what we're kind of doing is just making novels around crime happening in this hub of Twisted Tree, and just every book that comes out is going to be more like a thriller around this kind of dark and mysterious town, I'm kind of for it. Because I do quite like reading about not only Twisted Tree, but the town next door, Ransom, and kind of this like commentary that Markert is making in a pretty blunt yet also kind of veiled way about like the differences in class. There's a lot of commentary on nurture versus nature in the story, which I think is really, really well done, because while it is very much in your face, you don't feel like it's hitting you over the head with the obvious. And I really, really liked that. And I really liked the idea of like the wealth versus like people who grow up wealthy versus people who are poor and grow up in the system. I thought that was a really nice juxtaposition too, to kind of show the different ways that people come out of those situations. I thought that was really, really well done, and how there's a whole lot of things aren't always what they seem throughout this novel, but again, it was done very, very well. I liked the twist. I think I kind of saw it coming by the time that I got to it, so I wasn't like blown away by it, but I did appreciate what it was. The ending was like cute. It's probably one of the stronger endings that Markert has had, because it's one of the few endings where I'm like, oh, okay, like, it doesn't feel like it's open-ended, but I also don't feel like I'm asking any questions and wanting more. Like, it was just like cute and happy and done with like a neat little bow, and that was fine. So overall, because I've been just rambling about this now, this was a 4-star read for me, but this is a generous 4-star read for me. Because when I look at what Markert has written before, I've been more impressed with his previous novels. And I feel like had I read this not having read Sleep Tight, I probably would have appreciated it more. But it just drew so much from the structure of Sleep Tight that it did feel very, very redundant. So it probably should be more towards like a 3-star read, because it is just kind of a fine story. But I found it enjoyable, and that's where it gets the 4 stars. It's not like I sat here and I read it over the course of several days. I read this very quickly, and I enjoyed being on this journey. And I do quite like Markert's prose. I think he's very, very good at writing like fast-paced, get to the point, still being able to say something without dumbing it down prose. And I think he did a great job with that. So if you're a fan of Markert, I would say pick it up. If you've never read Markert before, definitely go towards something like Sleep Tight or The Nightmare Man instead as your starter novel, because I think you're going to get better examples of what he is capable of and what he likes to write. Now, I do enjoy his like mind for mysteries, and I really, really liked how he pulled from so many real cases to kind of put this serial killer together. And there are some frightening scenes in here. There are definitely some frightening scenes in here. When Amber is driven off the road at one point, I thought that was really, really scary, and I thought that was really, really well done. Actually, almost all of the scenes with Amber were pretty horrific, and if you were putting yourself in her shoes, it is this kind of teenage ego that really gets her into most of the situations that she falls into, and her inability to like understand and care about where her mom is coming from and the trauma that her mom suffered through to get to where they are. So like, it is interesting to see the things that Amber goes through. Again, not justified things that she goes through. She goes through really, really horrible, 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 horrible things. But the scenes with her were definitely, in my opinion, the scariest. And the spider is actually a really, really cool villain. I really, really, actually really enjoyed how he operated as a villain. And I thought that was really unique, really interesting. Please tell me in the comments down below if this is something that's like actually happened in real life. I don't think it is, because it's a very, very, very bizarre way to be a serial killer. But I thought it was really interesting. I thought the motivations behind it, I thought the connections to other people involved in his life, in his past, and getting the similarities between those to bring him to where he is today and why he operates the way that he does was really, really cool. And again, really reflects that nature versus nurture thing, especially with his obsession with spiders. And I thought that was really, really well done. And again, I love the commentary on familial relationships. You get so much commentary on parent and child along with siblings. And I really liked how Markert kind of presented before you that like not everything is nature versus nurture, but there's kind of equal parts that affect you. And he showed it in a very, very, very detailed way over and over and over again. And I really, really appreciated that. So yeah, definitely if you're a fan, pick this up. If you've never read Markert before, he has better books out there that are worth checking out beforehand. Don't use this book to be your dive into his work and expect that this is going to be like the creme de la creme, because it's not. It is a fun read, it is a spooky read, and has a really creative serial killer and a decently interesting protagonist. I wouldn't say like the most lovable or likable, but like decently interesting, and I really, really love her like ability to be chronically online. It felt very poignant and topical to today's world. So definitely worth it for that. But yeah, I will definitely continue to be buying Markert's work. He really hasn't released a book that I don't like so far, so that says something to me. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I am trying very hard to get back onto my normal posting schedule of 2 to 3 times a week. If you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah!